Man, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Can you hear me?
Hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, starting, of course, with the new album. The album title clearly connects to the classic On Target. Was it conceived as a direct musical and lyrical follow-up?
Yeah. Have you heard the album?
No, not yet, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, it's. I'll put it to a quick story. I went out as David Reece solo for 4 or 5 years, and I took a real hard look because it's really difficult touring to sell tickets, and Bangalore Choir is a brand name, and I play a lot of those songs from On Target in my live set, and the response is always great. And so I spoke with management and I said, I'm thinking rather than just going out as David Reece, call it David Reece's Bangalore Choir. And speaking with Brave Words Records, they thought it was a great idea. But I had to go back in my head 30 something years to where my mind was at that time. Because, remember, I just left Accept and I went to Hollywood and I put together the band. And we got an offer from every record company in California in 9 shows. So the songs were really special. And when I play those songs live, people, they know the words, blah, blah, blah. So I had to kind of go back in time, which was not easy to try to recreate kind of that sound. But I think I achieved it with Rapid Fire Succession on Target Part 2. It's some of the stuff is similar, the melodies, but it wasn't easy. I had to dig deep and yeah, it's hard to remember where your brain was years ago. Excuse me, different circumstances in your life, different energy. You're younger, but I think I reached it. Yeah, it really, really, really turned out great. There's 16 songs on the album.
Well, producer Gals Lavery called this possibly the best album of your career. Do you see it that way as well?
Yeah, I hate to say that. It sounds kind of arrogant, I suppose, but I really think the focus put in the songwriting and vocally, I have to say, if it's not the best, it's right there with the best. And I think some of my best records were Eat the Heat, Bangalore Choir on Target, Cacophony of Souls. There were some really good albums in my career. And there were some that were kind of flat. They were good songs, but just not quite there. We all do that, all songwriters. And something happened with this one. The magic just kept coming. Once I got in the brain set of where I was going, and I have to give a lot of credit to Andy Susamil, because he played in Bangalore. We did some festivals together back in like 2010 with some of the original lineup, and Andy and I had written a lot of records together, a lot of songs. So I called him because he was the right guy to contact, and he knew exactly what I was trying to say. We tried. We wrote a few, 2 or 3 songs, and it just wasn't quite there yet. And I said, let's really study On Target and get our mind in there, and then we'll figure it out. And we did. And then I co-wrote 3 of them with Mario Percadani from Hardline. He's an amazing songwriter. We have one really special song, which will probably be a radio single as well, that we wrote together, Mario and I. Um, and I work with Marcel Singer from Holland on one track. It's called Sail On. That's really special to me. Kind of got a Van Halen jump feel to it. Um, and I worked with Ferdy Dornberg on kind of a piano, Elton Johnish gospel kind of rock thing that's on the record. Jimmy Waldo guests on it, the record, plays a little keyboards on one of the songs. Gorka Alegra from Spain. He toured with me playing bass on the UDO tour, Steel Factory. So I reached out to all the guys that I had the chemistry with that I knew would fit to make this possible. But yeah,
Mm.
I think I hate to say that because maybe I've got a better record in my heart somewhere for the next one. I don't know, but it's damn good.
And what
Really
can you
good.
tell me about the
If you loved On
lyrics?
Target, I really think you're going to love this. Our first single will be Bullet Train. It's called with the video. The video is finished. I think it comes out either the 18th of July or the 25th of the album.
And what can you tell
The
me about
whole
the
album.
lyrics of the new album? Is there a common theme or concept that runs through both acts of the album?
I've never been a lyric writer that talks about partying on the Sunset Strip. I'm not really into that. It's kind of too much for me, the glam thing. Um, but I like to write songs about what's in my head. Like if people are having a conversation and I hear somebody say something, I go, "Oh, that's a cool song title." So I write it down, and then I go home and I look at it for a few days, and then I just kind of write a story around it. There's a lot of there's songs about regret. There's songs about the way we live now, the fast-paced life. I kind of compare it to something really exciting happens today, but tomorrow everyone's forgotten about it. The attention span. There's a lot about that lyrically. I musically, I knew that hard rock, big vocals are what people expect from me. So you'll hear a lot of harmonies, a lot of harmonies. We kind of even went so far as to say, you know, the Meatloaf album, Bad Out of Hell, with Todd Rundgren and Steinman and those guys. I mean, I was a huge fan of that work. Mutt Lange. So Giles and I kind of dug into that sound and that vibration, you know. I'm a big Eagles fan. I love Tom Petty. I like Bad Company, but it's definitely not new metal. It's, you know, I tried that routine with the last solo record, Baptized by Fire. Fans really liked it, but I heard a comment from some people in Asia. A band was on tour and said, "I really like David's new solo album, but I really wish he would go back to the Bangalore Choir style of performance and vocals." So it's comparable to On Target lyrically, I think. You know, there's fast songs, there's very sad, slow blues ballads. Yeah, it's the full spectrum. I mean, we had 24 songs, I think, and we picked the best 16. And Giles and Brave Words, they said, let's do Act One, Act Two. Let's just do 16 songs. So there's 8 songs in Act One, 8 songs in Act Two. So it's kind of a whole story, the way it seems like. And I don't know how this happened. All of it, the music kind of goes like a book. It wasn't intentional. It just happened that way.
Mhm. You've often
I
said
hope
that
I answered I hope I answered.
you've often said that there was unfinished business with Bangalore Choir. Do you feel that with this record you're finally closing the chapter, or is there still more to
Well,
come?
there's more to come. I hope. Of course, it depends on the success of this record. I mean, we have booked, and starting in October, I go out Bangalore Choir starting in France for about 10 days and Holland. And then I go out with Alcatraz and Girls School in November into December. And then I think I'm going out in February with Warlord. And then I have the Volcanic Festival and a few other festivals in Germany in July. So it's definitely sparked the interest again. So, and the people that have heard it, the record company are just crazy about it. So I have a really good feeling about Brave Words. They really got a great media structure and promotion. So I think they'll do a great job getting it to the public. But
Do
it's for
you
the fans to decide.
do you have
You
any
know, I
plans
have a
to
little
bring the
anxiety
show
about
to
it. I
South?
just spoke to my wife an hour ago. You know, oh God, I hope it's people like it. You know, but really, there's nothing you can do about it. They either love it or they don't.
I'm sure people will love it. Well, are there any plans to bring the show to South America?
Brother, I have been asked to come to South America 100 times, and I've been very close. I need a good promoter in your part of the world. because I would jump on a plane tomorrow. So I would love to come. So maybe doing this podcast, we can get some interest and come down, because I'd love to. I've had, God, like I said, certain promoters talking and, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but you have to use a Brazilian band because of the budgets and blah, blah, blah. And I see some of these bands and I'm like, those guys play great, but it never quite gets to the finish. You know what I mean? So hopefully sooner than later. I've never been there. So that's on my bucket list of, things to do before it's over.
Let's make it happen. Well, On Targets
I hope so.
On Targets became a cult classic, even though it was released during a tough time for hard rock music. Looking back, what do you think held the album back from achieving the commercial success back then?
Well, it wasn't the organization. I mean, I had Warner Brothers Records. I had Howard Kaufman managing me, who had Whitesnake, Heart. I had everything, the whole organization behind it. We had some kickoff tours with Lynch Mob and other acts. But, music is funny. It's like a cycle. I think Lemmy put it pretty well. He said, you can't kill rock. You'll have different phases come in for 3 years and then they'll go away, and then hard rock comes back. I just saw Judas Priest last night in Italy, and it was fantastic. So this band has been around for 50 years and the people were going crazy. So it's still alive and well, but Nirvana came out the same day Bangalore came out. Never mind. And we had heavy rotation on MTV. The sales were fantastic the first few weeks, but Nirvana slowly, I think in the first month, Nirvana sold 6 million records. So you're on top of the world for 1 month, and then literally maybe 8 weeks later, they dropped us. They changed the whole signing process, and it was heartbreaking. I mean, I remember clearly standing at a barbecue kitchen party with Janie Lane and some other artists, and all of us were just standing in the kitchen looking at each other going, what happened? 3 months ago, we were doing tours. People were talking about our record. Now they don't even want to talk to us. So it was devastating. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I tried to go kind of the grunge sound. I did a solo thing called Circle of Silence with Greg Chason from Badlands and Jay Shellen. We tried to kind of appeal to that audience, but the true grunge fans, they knew what we were doing. It wasn't real to them. It wasn't like Nirvana or Alice in Chains or Soundgarden. It was a bunch of 80s rock guys trying to be relevant with the change in times. But I knew in my heart that grunge would not last forever. And I got a call in early 2010 from Firefest. And they said, if you can bring at least 3 original members to our festival, we would love to have Bangalore Choir. And I got Kurt Mitchell to agree, and Danny Greenberg, rest in peace, Danny, he just passed away. And we went and played. Andy was in the band on that show. And I had people in the UK say to me, I've waited 19 years to see this band. And from the first song until the last song, incidentally, we made a live album from it. And we hadn't played together in 20 years. We rehearsed in the hotel and played the show and made a live record. People were singing every word. Had I known that grunge really didn't go to Europe and the UK for maybe a year or two later than the United States, I would have taken the band on an airplane and played corner pubs, because we still had a great following. People loved the band, and I was told it was over. So what do? You believe the corporate guys and you go, okay, do something else.
How do you see
the older I... Go ahead.
And how do you see the impact of On Target today, more than 30 years later? Do you still hear from fans who discovered the album recently?
Yeah, it's really weird, because I've had people in their early 20s, come to my solo shows. Say France, we'll give a country for an example. And will come up to me and they bought the CD. They found it in a store and they go, I heard about this and I never, yeah. And and they just bought it and they say, I love this. This is incredible. It came out in 1992. What happened? And then you got to tell the story. And they're like, oh God, I wish, you'd come more. And then I would say, hey, I'm playing Just One Night. I'm playing Slipping Away. I'm playing Freight Train Rolling. And they're like, oh yeah, Angel in Black. Oh yeah, and when you play those songs, you see a 20-year-old kid singing the words, you go, this matters. People, it's just strange how that works. I'm kind of one of those guys that, like Eat the Heat, when I did the Accept album, they reissued that record. I was on the Udo tour. They did 3,000 copies in vinyl, special edition. And I'm doing the tour, and every night at the merch booth, people would walk up with that vinyl and say, I hated you when you replaced Udo, but I have to say I'm sorry. I love this record. Would you please sign it for me? So call me 30 years late. People say it's successful. I'll take that.
Well, many people don't know that Jared Leto made his acting debut in a Bangalore Choir music video. Do you remember that shooting day?
Yeah, Jared Leto, absolutely. I picked him.
Yeah.
We had auditions for actors, and we probably saw 50 boys. And he walked in with his mother, wearing a flannel shirt, greased hair like James Dean, and he just had this look. I said, "That's the guy." And my manager said, "Yeah, that's him." And a short story about that. I went to see 30 Seconds to Mars in Germany, probably 2008. And I got backstage and he's playing for 20, 30,000 people. And I walked up to him and I said, do you remember me? And he's looking at me and I said, I'm David Reece from Bangalore Choir. And he went crazy. He goes, oh, you guys, that was my first acting gig. I was in his video. And I go, yeah. And I had a girlfriend at the time who loved Jared Leto. And she goes, you realize that's Jared Leto in the video, right? And I didn't really know. And then I went, oh yeah, that is Jared Leto. But I gave him his first acting job. I think we paid him $100. And the girl that's in the video, she also, I forgot her name. She also became a famous actress, the blonde girl. I can't remember her name, but both of them were very successful. Isn't that crazy?
I suppose you could never imagine that 40-year-old kids would become a global star, right?
I mean, I'm watching him in Cologne, 30,000 people going crazy, and he's singing and jumping around with orange hair. And I'm just standing there and I'm like, I want to talk to this guy. And he absolutely was a gentleman and thankful. And I think his mom was there that night too. Yeah. She was on tour with him. Of course, well, he was he was a movie star, a super movie star at the same time when I met him. Yeah.
Every song featured on Target were written by the band except for Angel in Black and Doing the Dance. How did the songs made the album?
Record company conversations. I actually released Beyond Target. Have you heard of that? The demos, the lost tapes?
Yeah.
We had written, I probably had 30, 40 songs. And short story on that, the drummer that played on Target, we replaced him. So he went to the studio and stole the master tapes, the mixed tapes, and basically contacted me and said, for this much money, I'll give you back the masters. And I said, no, I'll call the FBI and I'll get my masters back. So we listened back to it and I said, there's so many great songs that never made the album. But back to On Target, when you work with the corporate rock world, you have all these people who think they know what a hit song is, yeah? So they introduced me to Steve Plunkett from Autograph. And he came to the studio and played me some songs, and he played Angel in Black. I go, that's a good one. And he goes, yeah, I thought this would work for your voice. So we chose Angel in Black. And Doing the Dance was written by Aldo Nova and Bon Jovi. And my manager assistant said, John is doing Young Guns, the soundtrack at A&M Records. You should go down. They've got some songs that Aldo is writing with them, and they want you to hear them. So chance to meet Bon Jovi? Of course. So I went down to the studio and they played 4 or 5 songs and they played Doing the Dance. And my guitar player, Kurt Mitchell, said, we can make that happen. Now, Loaded Gun was written by the bassist who plays with Styx now. I can't remember his name. But that song, I really didn't like it. And they pushed me, corporate, you got to do this song. It's a hit. And actually, when they released that song with Jared Leto, it was added to Ricky Phillips. Yes. And they automatically, that song before Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit song exploded. Loaded Gun was the most added to radio for months of any other band. We had like 144 stations around the world playing Loaded Gun. When we got on the Hard 60 with MTV with it, then they moved us up to the Hard 30 with Ricky Rackman, and it was exploding. But like I said, a month later, it was dead. Radio changed the whole playlist. MTV went total grunge. They went rap. Everything was over. It was unbelievable. But I was not the only victim of that. I mean, let's be honest. Every hard rock band had bleach blonde-haired lead singer, you know, with 2 guitar players with big hair and spandex or cowboy boots. We all looked the same. And I think we kind of killed ourselves because the public, the young public, are like, nah, I can't relate to this. I want to hear songs about growing up and the suffering I'm doing. And grunge touched that, especially in America. You know, the homeless kids, the drug addicts. It's something about those dark melodies. It sparked. It's the same thing when the Beatles came to America. Elvis Presley was the king. When they came, Elvis started playing casinos. It was over. The Beatles were the thing, and then the Stones, and then in America, like 76, new wave came in, punk, and everything was punk and new wave. And then Tom Petty was kind of punk, Elvis Costello, and then about 1978, Van Halen came out, and then the new wave of British metal took over. Yeah, so it goes like this. Yeah, but watching last night in the audience of Judas Priest, there were kids that were 10 years old and people in their 70s singing every song. So that gives me hope.
You mentioned that you didn't like Loaded Gun. If it was only up to you, what would have been the lead single of On Target?
I would have said Angel in Black, personally, or Slipping Away. And then the second would have been If the Good Die Young Will Live Forever, the big power ballad. That song we wrote in about 30 minutes, Good Die Young. We had the title, and I have to say John Kirk, the second guitarist, we just sat down and he started scribbling words. I was scribbling words. And by the end of rehearsal, that song was about finished, 30 minutes. I mean, it was like, it's one of the, I call them like raindrops. They just kind of fall out of the sky. And that happened on Rapid Fire Succession, this record. That after we got into the rhythm of what we were trying to do, songs just kept flying. Andy and I and Mario, it was just nonstop for 2 months, writing, recording. And I have a studio in my village at Piacenza, Italy, that's very close. And Riccardo Di Morosi is my bass player, and he's also my engineer. So I can walk 10 minutes to my studio, very convenient. So I was in there every day. And I've got Nelo Savinelli on drums. He's from my solo band. So I've got a really tight rhythm section. So everything, I could just get an idea, get a rough sketch, go in and record the vocal, listen to it and go, yeah, let's work on this. So I think I answered your question. Songs, the band hated Loaded Gun, especially Kurt Mitchell. I'm not playing that song. I'm not recording that song. That's not me. And all the radio people at the management and the record company, you've got to do this song. And he fought and he fought and he fought. And I kind of agree with him. It was a little too soft. I used to play it live, and then I don't sing it well, honestly, live. It's a very hard song to sing. And it kind of, the audience knows it, but they don't get up on it like they do Angel in Black or slipping away or just one night or freight train.
All or
You
nothing.
really feel the energy. All or nothing, yeah. Well, our encore is all or nothing and Angel in Black. We end the set with that, and the place goes crazy.
Awesome,
When
man.
do you get the when are you getting a copy of the new Bangalore? Do you know?
I don't know. I'll ask Michael to send me a copy.
Yeah, yeah, because I start doing interviews. You're the first one, actually.
Oh,
Tonight, you're
what
the
an honor.
first guy. Yeah. Hey, welcome. Good luck, man. I need your help. But I was told last night Giles Lavery was in war. Of course, he sings for Warlord. He was on stage, and I said, "What's the day?" He said, "July 18th, I think, first single." I said, "Okay, good." And then I got your message, Michael, like that day, yesterday, day or the day before. The interviews are starting to kick off, but you're number one.
Oh, that's amazing. First of many, I hope. Well, let's talk about Accept. Um, It's the Hit remains
Okay.
a polarizing yet respected album among Accept fans. How do you reflect on that period now?
I wouldn't be speaking to you if it wasn't for Accept. I'm grateful for the opportunity. It opened a lot of doors for me. Like I said, they fired me and I went to California, and in 9 shows in California is about 9 months. You don't play every weekend. And by the time I had completed like show 9, 8, I had an offer from every major record company. So I'm the reason, because I lived in California before and nobody knew my name. But as soon as I did Accept and I went back to Hollywood, everybody knew me. And automatically, what are you up to? What's the band like? They had an interest. So I'm grateful for that. But culturally, I'm working with a bunch of Germans. I'm an American guy. It was a big step for them to try a new singer. They did it because of the corporate reason. Because Balls to the Wall did 400,000 copies, maybe more now. It's been 40 years, but they could never really break America. So the New York music business said, get an English speaking, good looking young guy who can sing more commercialized, Accept. And I think we can really break this band because they had the foundation, but it failed. So, of course, inside the band, and I'll tell you what happened. While we were making the record, Dieter Dirk said to me, we were about halfway finished, excuse me, and he stopped recording and he looked at me. He said, you realize if this record fails, it's your fault and my fault. I said, nah, I'm David Reece. I'm a great singer. He goes, no, they're going to blame you and they're going to blame me as a producer that we destroyed the band. And he was absolutely right. They blamed him and I when the record was not successful. But then again, now people are coming to me and saying, because I actually re-recorded Prisoner. I put it on the new Bangalore album, but it's a lot heavier, more guitars, no keyboards. It's the way it should have been. Giles said, you need to re-record Prisoner. And I wasn't sure at first, but then we recorded it and I said, that's a pretty good song. But yeah, I took a lot of heat for that. And of course, Accept are going to blame everybody for the failure and they're going to blame me. But I've managed a great relationship with Udo for 35 years, almost 40 years. He and I are really good friends, and it was just a bad timing.
Do you
Yeah.
still
But
perform
now,
Accept? Do you still perform the Accept songs during your shows?
yeah, I play Ecstasy, I play Hellhammer, and Generation Clash.
Hmm.
And they
And
all know it, and they love it.
working again with Herman Frank in Aaron Elias, did it bring back memories of the Accept days?
Well, I didn't know Herman. We had played the same festivals together, but he would be on a Saturday or I would be on a Friday. I see that Victory was playing, or but we never met. He wasn't in Accept when I was there. It was Jorg Fischer for a while, and then they got Jim Stacy. One day I was sitting here and I got an email from Herman, and he said, "Hey, why don't we try to write some songs together? I said, okay. And it just didn't work out. The record sold really well. We played Grass Pop last year. We played Czech Metal Fest. But his focus is victory. And the combination of the two of us together just wasn't a good working relationship. I wish him well. He's happy in victory. I'm happy with Bangalore Choir. I mean, but we made a great album. I mean, one of the best-selling records of my career, to be honest, these days. Do you like it?
Yeah, I think so. Not my cup of tea, but it's still a strong effort.
Yeah. Are you more of a Bangalore Choir type music fan?
Completely.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So see, I kind of brought some of that to Iron Allies, but he wanted to be more extreme metal, which is really strange because Victory is more like Bangalore Choir. If you listen to Victory, you go, that's kind of pop rock. It's I don't really understand what he was thinking, but it didn't work out. I wish him well. You know,
the latest Victory album was actually released in Brazil on CD format, and I reviewed, and it's actually melodic rock. Melodic rock with some heavy veins in some of the songs.
Mm-hmm. I think Gianni is a really wonderful singer. I've become friends with him. I think he's a really powerhouse vocalist, and he's got great talent. I think he's a great singer. There's a few singers out there.
Man, if you could go back in time and give young Dave Reece from the early 90s some advice, what would it be?
Business-wise, I would say this: know when to say no, because I was always afraid to stand up to the record company because I didn't want to lose my contract. And I let them push me around. To the young artists, if you don't feel good about what they're telling you, don't do it. If you really feel in your heart it's not right for you, don't do it. And when I finally said no, unbelievably, they looked at me and said, okay, what would it take to make you happy? And I thought, I have wasted all this fear and anxiety, and all I had to do was say, no, I'm not going to do that. Like Curtis did with Loaded Gun. If I would have stood up against the power, I probably could have gotten Angel in Black as the first single. But I was afraid because, Accepted fired me. Now I'm on the rise again. I don't want to rock the boat. I want to keep things sailing, play the game. But there comes a time when you have to be true to what you do. Like this new Bangalore Choir album. If it's not a really great song, I was not going to put it on the record. I don't care who told me that I had to. I have actually argued about it, and I've won the battle and said, this is why I don't like this song. It doesn't feel like me. Because I have to go on stage and sing that song. And if I don't feel it, I'm not going to perform it. If I'm just going through the motions, I have to really believe in the song that I'm singing. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but if you don't really, as a singer, emotionally are attached to it, the people aren't emotionally attached to it. You can go out there on a festival and blow through a set for 45 minutes, 50,000 people, bunch of noise, blah, 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 blah. Then they're waiting for, let's say, Steel Panther or Slipknot. They enjoy it, but you're not really presenting it. So my advice to myself is I should have said no. I used to be a drug addict. I used to be an alcoholic. I drank. I don't do anything. I should have never done that. That was a bad choice. Stay away from drugs and drinking. You don't need it. You don't need it to be cool. You don't need it to be part of the scene. It's about the music.
Man, I'd like to thank you so. Oh, please go on. I'm sorry.
No, what did you say?
I was about to thank you for participating, but I think you kind of froze and I lost my focus.
Oh, that's okay. I just, that would be the only thing that I feel most powerfully about. Of course, when you're making an album, it's a contract. There is compromise involved. But if you can maintain your integrity, then you feel like, okay, this record is really me. Yeah. And everybody has an opinion, and if you let all those opinions get in your head, you lose focus of what you're trying to achieve. And nobody knows what works. Nobody. So if you write a great song that you feel is really representative of yourself, put it out. Because just because a guy worked in a record company in the 80s or 90s, it doesn't mean he has a magic formula to make that a success. It's up to the people. If they feel it, they'll respond to it. There's a lot of music out there. I call it McDonald's drive-through music. It all sounds the same. I can't remember the song after it's finished playing. Then I put on another band. It sounds like the band before. And I'm like, same band? No, this is so-and-so. Oh, it sounds like the other band. And I think that was a problem with the 80s too. We all started sounding like each other. We all wanted to sound like Whitesnake. After the 87 album came out, everybody was trying to write Still in the Night, which was actually a Led Zeppelin ripoff. So goes back even further in time to the 70s. And we all jumped on that bandwagon, and we basically killed the snake. We cut our own head off,
Man.
That's as honest as I can be. I don't know what to say.
But this pretty sums up in the highest level, man. I would like to thank you so much for participating. And now feel free to invite the audience to listen to the new album, follow you on social media, etc., etc.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the interview, brother. I mean, and the people of your country. I will be there one day. And come out and see me play live. If you go on David Reece Official or David Reece and Bangalore Choir Facebook, Instagram, you go to Bands in Town, you can see all the tour dates that are scheduled for this year. And if you happen to be in that country, who's ever seen this, please come to the show. I promise that I really think we hit it with this new album, Bangalore Choir, Rapid Fire Succession, Brave Words Records, On Target Part 2.
Man, it was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And this was our first podcast, so I look forward to it when you put it out. I'd like to share it.
Yeah, I'm sure sending you the link as soon as it's on.
I can't wait to get you would send me an email what you think of the record. I
Sure.
would like to hear your opinion.
I'll send you. Thank you so much, man.
Okay,
Have a nice
my brother.
day.
God bless you. God bless. Thank you. Bye.